And welcome you all to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus live show coming up. And we had a little bit of technical difficulty, but you're here with the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus show live coming at you. And we're here with our host, Mark Kennedy with the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus, and my co-hostess with the mostest, Aaron Porcher. So we welcome you to the show as we pipe down on our music. That was not a very smooth transition, but as you all can see, I am not broadcasting from my usual place. So things are a little bit different. We apologize for the trouble, but it looks as though we've been able to fix it and we've been able to get things to work as planned. But Aaron, how are you? Get anything in live with this live stream and anything happens. Well, here we go. Here we are.
We're here. Are live every place that we need to be, right?
Live every place we're supposed to be. And I tell you, it has been an unbelievable 3 days, at least here in Northern Virginia, I tell you. But folks, I just want to take the time to welcome all the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus business owners and Democratic business owners, soon to be business owners. You're here. We love you being here, and everybody else who's coming to view our show as we stream live. And whether you're viewing it live or whether you're viewing it later on during when you have time, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us at the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Facebook page. You can find us at the Louisiana Democratic Small Business Caucus page on Facebook. And you can find us on LinkedIn, and you can find us on YouTube and on Twitter. So we're streaming in 5 different places. And we've got a fantastic guest host who we'll have on today as we wish you a fantastic, happy new year as our first show of the year. Comes in a little shaky, but we landed the plane, the wheels hit the ground, and he just told everybody, keep your seatbelts buckled. Because we are here and we're happy to see you back in 2022. Aaron, what's going on with you in 2022?
Hey, listen, it is prime time. It is go time. There's so much opportunity before us, and it's really just time to seize the opportunity, leverage relationships, build healthy partnerships, and just continue to change the narrative in our community. I'm just really excited about everything that 2022 is going to bring us.
Well, if we made it through 2021 and 2020, listen, there's nothing that can stop us in 2022 because those have been some challenging COVID years. It is not over yet, but we are still hanging, aren't we?
Indeed. Still moving on upward.
Well, I'll tell you, speaking of COVID, just going to tell you what we always tell you. You have to get your vaccinations. You got to get your booster. Do your due diligence, folks. We love you out there. We want to make sure everybody stays safe as we continue to be challenged with this pandemic. But guess what? We will get through this too. And this too will be behind us soon enough. Nothing dampens our optimism and our belief that we can get it done. And we are getting it done because we've already done it for 2 years. We're ready to do it again. So nothing stops this train, Let's just keep, our faith in front of us and the belief in a higher power. We can get it done. And that's what we're doing today. Aaron, things are going, kind of crazy here in Northern Virginia where I am, but how are things down there in Baton Rouge?
It's amazing. I flew out after spending a whole month in the DMV. Great times, good times, connecting with you and many others. And I made it out just in the nick of time. I flew out Sunday at 1:30 p.m. And that was a delayed flight. And also I had a flight that was canceled. So I made it back to Louisiana, just in a nick of time. And, my heart goes out to you and all my friends out there in the DMV that was slammed with all of this snow just suddenly. Um,
We
but,
did get a lot of that.
I know, right? It's crazy. And I know it's been a lot of work for you all. But I made it back here to Louisiana to some wintry weather. Um,
Hmm.
32 degrees when I made it back. And things have been really good. Today I went to a press conference, which was pretty awesome. That was
Hmm.
led by my high school mate, Representative Ted James, who has now been appointed to serve as Region 6 administrator for SBA. So really excited about those changes, and that's a pretty big win for the South, right?
Oh yeah.
Ted is a very distinguished gentleman and has great
Hmm.
business acumen. So just really looking forward to serving and supporting the initiatives there. One of the goals that he spoke about was increasing the number of small businesses winning federal government contracts. So that's high on his agenda, which that's the work that we do, and we talk about it here in the
Hmm.
from week to week. So I believe that, we'll really be able to add value and support as he steps into that role from the caucus standpoint. And, like I said, it's go time. It's
It's
go time.
definitely go time. Well, you're right about having a little bit of wintry weather because we had our share of that here in Northern Virginia. And the key word here is Northern Virginia. As you
That
can
is
see,
not the word, northern.
my background is different because I've been in a hotel for 3 days because of those 12 plus inches of snow and power being knocked out. Not that regular kind of fluffy snow. This is that heavy, wet snow.
Oh
Oh,
man.
things were
Man,
crazy.
I actually love the snow. I'm kind of upset that I missed it because, spending Christmas there, spending New Year, I was expecting a white
Well,
Christmas.
well, let me tell you, we
Not
got the
yet.
white Christmas, but just a couple of days late,
Just a
knocking out
couple
power
days.
lines. I've been out of my house for 3 days just to give
Oh,
you all sort of a special look. I know when I bring in that picture of what it looks like at my house and what I was doing. Go ahead, Aaron. I think where you got that picture. You want me to bring it up, or you bring it up? I'm going to show folks exactly what we were looking at. It is unbelievable. That is me at my house trying to looking at how am I going to get my car and these trees off my car and get my car where it needs to be. So listen, between that and between folks getting stuck on 95 for 24 hours, between where I live down to Fredericksburg, it was crazy. And I'm still out of my home. But we're blessed because at least I was able to get a hotel to put my family and myself in for the last couple of
oh
days. And
my
hopefully
God.
they'll get the power back on. But so we got slammed in
Yes.
Northern Virginia.
Oh my God. Mark,
Yes.
so I'm looking at the snow and
Uh-huh.
it was heavy, just as you described it. Now,
Right.
so I was there. So where is the car? Is it like in the yard, on the side of the road?
It's in
Like,
my driveway. That's my front
oh,
yard.
wow.
Yes.
Wow, wow,
That
wow.
is
Yeah.
serious snow. So I would just simply tell the people, I kind of told people, I said, listen, I reached out, I said, Lord, thank you for the beautiful wonderland, but I think we're good in Northern Virginia for snow now. But I don't think he
I
listened
just
because
getting
this
started.
Thursday, this Thursday, there's expected another 4 to 2 inches. So, hey,
Right,
but
that's what I'm saying. Y'all just getting started. Look, look, I'm headed to LA, but I'm coming back afterwards, okay?
okay,
So
you come on back.
my
I tell
snow
you, it's
boots and my scarf and have a little fun and stuff. I understand it's work, but
it's work, but
it's beautiful. It's so
got a little
beautiful.
bit of muscles trying to shovel that snow and
Yeah.
neighbor was snow blowers and tractors. It's been interesting, but we'd actually had a couple of pretty light winters the last couple of years. So I think we were due. So enough
Yeah.
about the weather. I won't talk anymore about it because I don't want to talk up a blizzard.
You know, it could be worse. You know, there's so many other
Worse.
things happening across the world. You know, so what we know is that certainly it could be worse. So
Could be worse. But
you're
you know what? We're always busy here in Virginia. We got more elections coming all the time. And, you know, we are prepping for 2022 and 2024. So 2022 is here. So, you know, there's elections coming up that affect small businesses, holding on to the House, getting things passed important like voting rights, plus a number of other things that are out there. Because with small business, we have to be able to hold on to our voting rights in order to hold on to our opportunities to build wealth here in this country as small businesses. And one of the things, as you know, I'm the one trick pony, and I'm going to keep talking about it and, you know, keep telling my Congress folks that they need to get this done. You know, but I want to kind of take this from a different angle this time, right? I've talked about voting rights. I've said the call to action. You need to call your congressman. You need to call your congressman or congresswoman or congressperson, your senator, or either your House of Representative person, and tell them they need to get that legislation out and supporting H.R. 1, which is the Freedom to Vote Act, and the H.R. 4, which is the John Lewis Act. And I'm not going to kind of talk about those per se, but I want to kind of give people a little more of a historical perspective. And one of the things I'm going to do is sort of just kind of give people an idea of why voting rights are so important and why we are looking at things on the eve of what's going of the anniversary of the insurrection that happened on January 6th, which is going to happen tomorrow. It all goes back to the same story and the same history that's happened here in the United States before. And I want to kind of give people an idea of what that is by giving them an idea of the history. And the history is important. So one of the things I want to do is I share my screen here is, oops, that's the wrong screen. So we're going to stop sharing that one because I'm going to bring up my other screen. Bear with me, folks, as I do that. Remember, you're on live TV. And we're going to also go to share our screen here. Maybe I should have tried this before. But anyway, I'll get it right in a minute. Stay with me. Stay with me. Let me go to the right window. And let me, no, that's not it. Oh, I know what I need to do. And I'm going to do this, bring it down, and then I'm going to be able to share my screen here. There we go. So I'm going to share it now. And we're going to talk a little bit about can you see that screen, Aaron? Because I've only got one screen up right now. And we're going to talk about the Rutherford B. Hayes, and they were talking about the election of 1876 was the Tilden versus Hayes election. And in that election, this gentleman right here is president at that time was Rutherford B. Hayes. But his election was one of the most contested elections that had happened in 1876. And what he did at that time was the election got thrown over to the Congress. And I'm going to go ahead and sort of just read this. It tells that the election between the Democrat Samuel Tilden, governor of New York, and the Republican Rutherford B. Hayes, who was the governor of Ohio. When the votes were counted, Tilden led Hayes by one vote in the Electoral College. But the Republicans accused Democrats of voter fraud, saying they intimidated African-American voters in 3 southern states, Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina, which prevented them from voting and fraudulently handing the election to Tilden, who was the Democrat. But at that time, the Democrats were the southern states that the Civil War was fought against them, with the Republicans where the African Americans were supporting them. So what Congress did, they set up a bipartisan commission, 5 representatives, 5 senators, and 5 Supreme Court justices, with the balance of 8 Republicans and 7 Democrats. They struck a deal with the Democrats that allowed Hayes to become the president and to respect. And the deal was, the Democrats said, we'll allow Hayes to be president, and as long as they respect the political and civil rights of African Americans, if the Republicans would remove all federal troops from southern states. So the deal was, Hayes becomes president as a Republican. Hayes agrees to pull all the troops out of the southern states, but only if the southern states agreed to respect the political rights and civil rights of African Americans in 1876. This effectively ended the era known as Reconstruction in the South and consolidated Democratic control in the South, which lasted into the mid-1960s. Essentially, what took place was all African Americans lost all of their rights to vote and to participate, and started what was known as the Jim Crow era of that time. And the segregation basically took over the South. Hayes kept his side of the bargains, removed all federal southern states within 2 months of his inauguration, but the Southern Democrats reneged on their part of the deal. With the federal presence gone, the disenfranchisement of African American voters in the South became widespread, and the southern states passed segregationist laws governing virtually all aspects of society, known as Jim Crow. This remained intact until the civil rights era of 1964, when they passed, during the administration of Lyndon Baines Johnson, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which followed a year later, and finally codified into law the promises made by southern states back in 1877. So what's the story here that I'm trying to get at? The story that I'm trying to really kind of make a point of here is that voting rights were what African Americans had at that time at the end of the Civil War, where they were elected into state houses, as governors, as senators, as congressmen, and all those sorts of things disappeared for 100 years once we had the compromise of 1877 take place with Rutherford B. Hayes. These things are important because when I talk to you about voting rights, the voting rights are important because now that 1965 Voting Rights Act, as I say every week, has been gutted. And what has happened is more sort of what you call Jim Crow 2.0, where voter suppression took place, is taking place in almost 50 states, where people do not have unfettered access and the right to vote. And I've told you, as in weeks before, that would include polling places 10, 15 miles away from where people live, getting rid of absentee voting, getting rid of drive-up voting, getting rid of the ability to provide people with either food or water when they're waiting in line because there are not enough polling locations for where polls are, and also things like closing the polls on Sunday, so getting rid of souls to the polls type thing. All these things that make it harder for people to vote is what's being taken place right now. And that is exactly the sort of thing that took place before. And we are trying to stop those sort of things from happening again. When they happened in 1877, 100 years of voter suppression through the Jim Crow and Ku Klux Klan and other extra legal type activities that prevented African Americans from casting their right to vote. And now these sort of things are happening again. And this is why you need to call your congressperson. You need to call your senator. You need to call your House of Representative person and tell them you need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. You need to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, and it needs to get to the president's desk to sign, because voting rights are foundational to any democracy. The reason why those voting rights were attacked 100 years ago and stayed in place, not because they weren't important, is because they are essentially what gives you power in a democracy. You have to have the right to vote. If you don't have the right to vote, and through what I've kind of showed you, through hopefully just a short historical sort of narrative of what happened 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, here we are again, where this is happening again, almost the same thing. People really saying that things didn't happen the way they should have happened, and so therefore we want to suppress people's rights to vote. And then you're going to have a scenario which happened again. The reason why we have statues and memorials to people like Martin Luther King and to people like John Lewis, who fought hard the civil rights thing, and Rosa Parks, and then untold other Americans of all hues, Asian American, European American, Latino, everybody who fought to put these things in place to make this nation a more perfect union, is really what is at stake. And we're really at the eve of the anniversary of what's going on now, which happened on January 6th of last year, when actually they tried to stop a president, a duly elected president, from being a transfer of power happening. So this is very important. And the call to action is call your congressperson. Call them every day and say, we're watching. We want you to pass the Voting Rights Act legislation, put it back into place, and get it to the president's desk so there can be a signature on it and it becomes law again, and we put this all behind us. This is foundational to our democracy. So I'm trying to just let you know, if there's people out there who are, not eating solid food, people like Joe Madison, you've got people protesting, getting arrested at the White House, all those things. This isn't a Democrat or Republican thing. This is an American thing. This is a patriotic thing to do. This is about a democracy, whether or not you like the person who gets elected or you don't. But the way our democracy is effective is when people have unfettered access to voting, choosing the candidate of their choice, not having some sort of despotic dictatorship where people either stop you from voting, or once the votes have been cast, try to change the outcome and disqualify votes, all these sort of things. This country has been in place for over 200 years, respecting that, making itself a more perfect union, and we want that to continue to happen. So folks, the call to action, call your congressperson every day and tell them Voting Rights Act needs to be passed and signed into law. We're watching, and we need to get this done. Aaron, you got anything you want to add to that? I just wanted to try to lay it out there a little historically and simple for people.
Yeah, Mark, I think that you've really laid it out for people to, one, see that if we take no action, if we continue to sit on the sidelines, that history will continue to repeat itself.
Yeah.
So with that, it's vitally important that, we get the information, we make a decision, and we take action. We call our congressmen, call those elected officials, and let them know our stance, our position, and what we want. Right? We've got to amplify our voice and make the case, right? So that things move forward and move forward in our favor, right? So I think you've captured it pretty well, made it plain and simple.
And
And
nobody, you're right about that, Aaron, and nobody does that better. We just had an election here in Virginia where Democrats fought as hard as they could to hold on to their statewide offices, despite the effort that we put up. We lost. But of course, there was no insurrection in Richmond or in Washington. We respect the rights of the voters to have, nobody has more progressive and unfettered access to voting in Virginia, maybe California. But in Virginia, we have passed these laws to make it extremely progressive for people to have the right to vote and to have unfettered access to the polls. And this is what we want to continue to do and make sure that those things are happening here all across the country. Get rid of all of those different states making different laws. We want to have one set of rules across all 50 states, and everybody has unfettered access to the voting, and making sure that no voting, once the votes have been counted, are tampered with in any way. That's just simple language. Real simple, easy to understand language. What, you got anything you want to add to that? That's what I wanted to say. Usually I'm all excited about it, but I'm trying to be calm and just lay it out so people understand why this is important.
Work is required, right? We still have work to do. So, I salute you for continuing to have this conversation because
Right.
it's really important that people hear the information and hear the different perspectives, right? So that they can make a decision. So, this is timely and on point and very necessary. So thank you.
Well, we're laying it out there. We're going to start off 2022 in the pocket. I'm going to do a little introduction of someone coming up who probably needs no introduction. We've had this gentleman on the podcast before, Andrew Lachman, who's an extremely important person to what we've gotten done through the years. And Andrew has been the chair of the Democratic National Committee Small Business Owner Council since 2012. He's been a California DNC member since 2008. He's also head of the legal group for Contenstack, which and prior to that, he ran his own firm. And Andrew's back again. Lachman Law is serving small to medium-sized technology companies, corporate data protection and technology transaction when he was running his own law firm. He's also worked for Move.com, Paramount Pictures, and OSI Digital as counsel, and has served as a legal legislative director for a senior advisor to Congressman Ted Lieu. And as a consultant to the California Legislative Joint Committee on the Arts. He's advised Clinton and he's advised Biden campaigns on small business innovation issues, and he's currently chair of the Los Angeles County Bar Association for Privacy and Cybersecurity. So without further ado, we want to bring back to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus show live Andrew Lachman.
Hey there, how are you? Good to see you. Hi, Aaron. Good to see you as well.
See you as well. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year. Hope you're enjoying the snow. As much as you guys want to complain about it, up north here in California, they got at one point near Yosemite National Park, they got 78 inches of snow last week. So
well, it was a national park, though. We live here.
Look, this is okay. First of all, it was the Donner Pass. Yes, like the Donner Party and all of that. That's where that took place. It's known for very, very heavy snowfalls. But apparently the snowpack brought California from 60% drought to 30% drought in 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of snow, Andrew. That's a lot of snow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the difference is, I grew up out in the Baltimore, DC area. There we go. In the Baltimore, DC area. So I know, we used to call Baltimore blizzards, where if you mention the word snow, all schools had to shut down for a week. So I know it's not as frequent of occurrence, or at least in that volume that you guys are getting hit by now. So, sorry to hear you're dealing with all of that, and just should be thankful you're not on I-95 outside of Fredericksburg right about now.
Well, there was we talked about it earlier, Andrew. There was people were stuck in their cars, man, for 24 hours. Can you imagine that between Woodbridge?
It's called LA traffic.
That's crazy. So folks are out now, though, man. But we couldn't have a better guest, really, to talk about what's going to be happening in 2022. Andrew, I know you've got yourself on your fingers on the pulse, working there with the DNC chair and the rest of the folks there. I mean, what's your views on one, a quick recap of last year, and what you see going forward in 2022? You've got some things we want to talk about. We'll let you talk a little bit first.
Well, I think, first of all, we've had some major victories this year, especially for small business. This administration has prioritized, and Democrats have prioritized small business in a way that Republicans were willing to pay lip service to. But when it came to where the rubber hit the road, they kind of went running in the other direction. I mean, it was the Trump administration that tried to eliminate micro business financing, or at least cut out one of the two agencies, which would have cut funding by almost 50%. It was the Trump administration that, basically had a lack of checks and balances originally with the PPP, failed to make PPP available to communities of color, where, something like 65-70% of Black-owned businesses said at the first two rounds they couldn't get access to it. But the Democratic administration, Democratic Congress came up with the ideas around PPP. It's Democratic Congress that did that. It was the Biden administration that expanded development access so that community finance development institutions could give access to which traditionally serve minority communities, could offer PPP loans. It was the American Rescue Plan, which created unprecedented and helped much needed support for small businesses, including something like 28 billion just for small for restaurants, money set aside for minority owned, particularly Black owned farms in this country, helping rural businesses which needed so much help and just wasn't getting that support, particularly from a lot of state governments. And then followed up with that with the infrastructure plan, which set aside, I think it was something like in the order of 65 billion. And I just have the numbers in front of me, so they may not be 100% correct. But for broadband in this country, so that underserved communities in cities and in rural communities will have access to broadband in the next couple of years. It's not just, people talk about, these broadband deserts where kids in cities are having to sit outside Taco Bell on iPads if they want to get access to internet because they can't afford it in their homes, and there's limited access in libraries and schools. This will address that. But rural communities too get hit very hard with this. It's hard to operate small businesses in rural communities if you don't and compete if you don't have access to consistent broadband access, and that's going to make a big difference as well. But also investing in our roads, investing in our bridges, investing in clean energy, which is also going to be very important for the growth of this country and very much run by small business. So those are a lot of the things that we did well. The other part on the other side, which is a little bit more, which has been some drawbacks. We've had some issues with Build Back Better. Actually, we can talk more about that and some of the other stuff going into what we need to do in the next year. But we did a lot this year, and that's with very little to no Republican help. Even the bipartisan infrastructure bill, an overwhelming number of Republicans apparently don't feel that that the need to invest in infrastructure unless that infrastructure is solely gas-powered cars and highways. And that's not how it works in this country. We need waterways where we can bring in goods from abroad and ship them out to stay competitive. And we need bridges, we need buses, we need high-speed rail, we need trains. We need availability where people who want to use bicycles can use bicycles in their community, particularly in cities. That's how a lot of delivery takes place. and things like that. So those are a couple of examples of really great things that this administration and Democrats have done this year.
2021 was it's a challenging year, but it's been a good year. And even though with all the challenges that we had, we still got a whole lot done considering the headwinds that we had to face. But there's some interesting stuff.
Mark, unemployment is at an all-time low. Unemployment applications is at an all-time low since it's been tracked since 1969. Since 1969, it has never been lower than it was this last quarter. That is growth.
Well, that's true. Matter of fact, I had a little bit of data that I wanted to kind of just share real quick on our screen there. What you're talking about, progress under the Biden-Harris administration, unemployment last year 6.7, this year 4.2. Adult Americans fully vaccinated, 0 in 2020. 2021, 71%. People employed, 142.8 in 2020, and 148.6 million of people employed. So you had an increase of 6 million in total retail sales, 549 billion in 2020. In 2021, 630. And I'm still in your thunder a little bit here because I know this comes from your side, right. Your information, man. So,
well, it came from the White House. I mean, they're the ones that do the work. We're happy to spread the word on it, but yeah.
Right, absolutely. So more of that. So 2021 is behind us. But man, I hear there's good things coming in 2022. You got some work to do, but a little more from that same content you provide. Small businesses in 2022, what some things are changing.
Well, one of the things that was done at the end of the year, and which hasn't got a lot of fanfare, is that the administration announced they were increasing access over the next 5 years to minority businesses in federal contracting by 50%. It's 11%. Right now I think it's around 6%. They're doubling it out to 11 and then 15%. And this is a big deal for minority-owned, women-owned businesses because, frankly, there's the last administration did everything it could to try to take away any kind of advantages for minority-owned businesses and small businesses. They even tried to completely eliminate the program within the Department of Defense, and thankfully that got pushed back as well. So this is a big deal for small businesses, particularly those that find it very hard to get into federal contracting. As a lawyer, one of my clients at one point was one of the largest women-owned technology businesses serving the federal government. So this kind of stuff makes a big difference for companies like that. And I know, Mark, you do a lot of work in this area as well. So it makes a big deal. A big difference.
Well, full disclosure, I have a technology firm. I'm a small business owner, obviously, for cybersecurity, cloud architecting, and DevOps work. So these sorts of things are important, particularly for small business and small disadvantaged business, or the various different constituents from Latino, woman-owned, veteran-owned, and Asian-owned small businesses and Native American. And so there's been a lot of improvements, hopefully, in some of these other, each one of those constituency has its own challenges, but the news overall, I use an old saying is, you can rising tide will float all boats, right? So
rising tide lifts all ships, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what we want to see get done. So for small businesses in 2022, what do you think as far as the challenges that we're going to be having coming up? What do you think are some of the things we ought to focus on, Andrew?
Well, number one, obviously we're all dealing with Omicron. It makes a difference to a lot of us. Biden administration is already, putting in place to make sure that testing is available. And thus far it looks like, and the science isn't conclusive yet, and science is something that's always ongoing, but it looks like, particularly if you are vaccinated, and if anyone is watching this who is not vaccinated, this has been approved by the FDA now officially. There is no reason not to do this. But if you're vaccinated, Omicron, the effect of Omicron is probably a lot less than it would have been, it was with Delta and a lot of these other ones that were out there earlier. So, dealing with Omicron is going to be important. Making sure that we have people in the administration who are standing for small business. I don't know if you've been following the situation with Dilawar Syed, who I had the chance to work with on small business issues during the campaign. This is a great gentleman who's got a long history of being an active entrepreneur and working with small businesses. He was appointed at the beginning of 2021 to be the deputy SBA administrator, and the Republicans are refusing to allow a vote to occur. And the only reason is because, frankly, he's Muslim. I mean, even amongst the Muslim organizations, the one he's involved with, Engage, has a reputation for building bridges, not burning them. And the fact that that they're holding it up, they've held this up all this year because of his religion, is just unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable. And this is coming from someone, because people frequently like to use pit the Jewish community against the Muslim community, and someone who's considered very much a supporter of a democratic Israel as a Jewish state. He's been great. He's been wonderful to work with, and that never came up. We helped each other all the time on activities from top to bottom, and so he was just renominated by the Biden administration, and he deserves a vote. So what you're seeing here, and in a lot of the stuff that we're seeing, it's going to be Republican obstructionism that makes the difference here, right? The fact that Republicans won't let there be a hearing for Dilawar Syed, the fact that Republicans will not allow even a simple up-down vote on expanding and protecting voting rights in this country, which I know you were talking about when I got in. Manchin, Cinema, they're all supporting this bill. The only opposition is coming from Republicans who mistakenly feel that any additional votes, allowing more people to vote, hurts them. And I hate to use Virginia as the example there, but Virginia has very progressive voting laws. They've been amazing in that area, and yet still, regrettably, but Republicans managed to do okay with this election. You don't need to make the pie smaller in order to preserve your power. You're still Americans, and you have an obligation to protect the civil rights of every individual and make sure every single vote is counted. And what we've seen out of Georgia and Texas, we need these protections for everybody out there. So that's going to be a big area. And hopefully, they're looking at some rules changes in the Senate, because enough is enough. We had 2 U.S. senators that held up, actually one in particular, Rand Paul from Kentucky, who held up something like 30 to 40 ambassador nominations just because there was no reason. He just wants to prove what an obstructionist he can be. So that's an example. If you're looking at we may have to dismantle various aspects of Build Back Better and bring it forward, but making childcare available to every person in this, to every family that needs it, helps people build small businesses. It is ridiculously expensive in this country if you've got small children. I mean, out here in California, it can cost you, well over $1,200 to $1,400 a month for any kind of, for daycare for small children.
Absolutely, that's just one child.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be that expensive. I know in the East Coast as well. I remember when I was in DC, it was pretty expensive as well. So, that's an area which we really need to make available.
But the point that you made there, that creates small business opportunity, as we're using our collective tax dollars really to create more small businesses providing that sort of care
Sure.
For children. So that money isn't going just like throwing it in the air and burning it. It's actually coming back as more revenue to the government while providing something that's good that allows people to be freed up and to go start small businesses or either go work for other small businesses or other larger companies. So it's really a win-win on both sides.
It is, and a lot of those, daycare establishments are small businesses. I mean, my mother-in-law started. She's a Guatemalan immigrant. She started a daycare business in her home, and until COVID hit, she was backlogged. She didn't have the resources to expand it and provide what she felt was the quality and the curriculum that she offered for pre-TK, transitional kindergarten, kids in before preschool. So I think it's a good demonstration about that it was a small business loan from the SBA that helped her get her business started. So this not only helps the people in the business of providing childcare and expanding, making it more financially better for them, but also on the other side, gives everyone else the time and the resources to be able to start those small businesses and run those small businesses and knowing that their children are taken care of, so people don't have to choose between feeding their family and raising their family.
Well, the human infrastructure bill, along with hopefully the president's going to get around to, in the Democratic controlled Congress, will get around to some relief on college debt, which also allows people to go out and purchase homes, start small businesses, increase in the Affordable Health Care Act, which allows people to go and operate on their own, which a lot of people have chosen to do anyway. People have decided not to work for people. They've decided to start their own enterprises. And I say, hey, that's a fantastic thing. And these sort of things that you talked about are just going to make more of that happen, and more people being able to, create jobs and also taxes that will go back to the federal and state coffers. So it all works, and it allows that wealth to actually be generated by other people who want to get into business. So I agree with that.
Yeah, and absolutely. And even in our some of our rural areas, the reauthorization, for America's national parks, and so much of our tourism industry in this country is built around those amazing national parks. We ourselves, during this pandemic, people could drive out and have get access to their national parks without being worried about getting sick, because they'd be out in the open. That's been held up for almost a year now in the U.S. Senate. House passed it. Senate hasn't even held a committee hearing on that yet.
Well, let me go to this thing. And Aaron, I don't want to just freeze you out of this conversation. I see little Landon behind you, so I know you believe in the child care piece with the little guy behind you there. So what do you think? What do you think about getting rid of the filibuster? Because most people are saying to get the foundational piece, voting rights passed, you need to be able to say, hey, let's get rid of the filibuster. Let's pass these. It's not in the Constitution. It's a Senate rule that has been mostly used to obstruct and oppress African Americans, and the Democrats of the old South have used that to fight against any civil rights law. I think the advantage, which really happens for the filibuster, is that it gives senators some sort of additional power and juice that they wouldn't ordinarily have based on the Constitution. So, but voting rights is so much more important. And if they need to basically blow up the Voting Rights Act in order to get, not the Voting Rights Act, but the filibuster to get that passed, then I think that's what they should do. I don't know. What do you think, Andrew?
I think whether it's some sort of focused rule on voting rights or a broader perspective, it's something that's going to be important for us to do. And that is one area where obviously we have a little bit of work in order to make sure we have a couple Democratic senators on our side who have been, who have some concerns. But Schumer at least seems to indicate that there may be some sort of consensus around something that can be done in that particular area. And Aaron, don't worry about your extra guest there. We'd be delighted to hear what he has to say as well.
Absolutely. This is
I've got a 9-year-old one downstairs, so
informal, informative, and engaging talk. So it's all family friendly.
I find that they know more than I do, or at least half the time they act like they know more than I do. So
well, it's Andrew. I wanted to also ask you, going into 2022. Aaron had mentioned some interesting things before you got on board. What do you think the Senate, the Senate Majority Leader, Senator Schumer? What do you think? And I know I'm asking kind of politically tough or hot questions here. What do you think he's going to do? Let me mellow that a little bit. What do you think he's going to do in the end?
What do I think? Who's going to do?
Senator Schumer.
I mean, Senator Schumer has, the majority leader's job is to get legislation passed. He'll find a way of getting it done. There's, we're mourning the passage this month, this week of, and I think, Senator, former Majority Leader Reid is lying in state. Great, hard fighter, someone who really went in there and fought for folks. Senator Schumer's the same. We're going to get some more of this stuff passed this year. He'll find a way of getting things done. And when you're asking the people what they want, they want people who are going to pass legislation that are going to make their lives better. That's what they want. And if the Republicans, we don't know the Republicans want to stand in the way of that. Just like the Republicans want to stand in the way of their own accountability over January 6th. But but Schumer will find a way of getting it done. And everyone will come together. I think they understand the importance of it.
When you bring up another point, here we are on the eve of the anniversary of January 6th of 2021. What's your thought about what Democrats and and I'll take this out, it's not a Democratic thing. What do you think Americans should be doing, and your thoughts on this anniversary of what happened last year, coming up on January 6th of 2022?
Well, I mean, what we're finding out every day is more and more shocking. The fact that, that a lot of folks who are conservative knew what was going on and kept quiet and let it looks like, let one person who was trying to be a despot, not a president, try to manipulate people to overthrow the will of the people, and almost overthrow, over 200 years of the great constitutional republic and democracy that we've had in this country. It's just shocking. So, it just kind of goes to show, I think you're going to see a lot more stuff come out in the next couple of weeks. They're finally having the hearings after the information gathering stage. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes out. And even more interesting to see the levels of denial that are out there, from a variety of people who, this is what's been seen over and over again. And there were studies that were done in other countries where this kinds of thing happens. People end up thinking, well, I can play this game, and then when I get in charge, I can correct it and we can fix what's wrong. But that's not how it works. Once you go off the rails, it is very hard to get back on.
And I was making that same, I tried to talk about it making the link from the situation that around voting rights, with talking about President Rutherford B. Hayes and how it was a voting rights issue, and how these things, when you don't have voting rights and voting rights are obstructed and you don't have unfettered, and there's not what you would call unfettered access to being able to vote, you end up with situations like this. So hopefully what we will see is that most Americans, and this is not a Democratic thing, it's not a Republican thing, it is not an independent thing, it is an American thing, which is foundational to our democracy, that people have the right to vote for the candidate of their choice. Those votes get counted, and may the best candidate win. That's the way it works.
Right. Well, again, if you ask Senator Rand Paul, apparently voter manipulation includes just persuading people to vote for you.
Okay.
His words, not mine. But there's a difference between that and trying to make between persuasion and stopping
Mhm.
people from voting. And what we saw there was stopping. What we're seeing is trying to do their best to stop people from voting. If your agenda, you can't persuade people to support it, maybe it's not the right agenda.
Yeah,
Maybe you
maybe
need to
it's not the right
re-examine
agenda.
the millionaires and the billionaires that are basically financing you,
Yeah.
and look at the people who you're supposed to serve, which isn't them, supposed to be the American people.
People power. It's about people going out there and doing that, and hopefully doing it in a way that we've come a long way in this country. We haven't done everything right, but we certainly have made a lot of improvements, and we're on the right track. But we got a couple of hiccups we're going to have to get through. But I have a lot of faith in the American people, and I believe that with good folks like yourself and folks from all sides of both sides of the fence or independents are going to make sure that happens. But,
And look at the achievement. I know, especially in Virginia, it was sad to see a disinformation campaign around education, of basically fear mongering over something
right,
that isn't, basically making sure that children in our schools get to learn about a history that includes people that look like them,
right,
and somehow making it sound like that's some sort of negative thing. And but on the other hand, if you look at it, Democrats went from, you guys were 6 to 7 seats out. How many seats did you guys pick up in 2019? 2017?
something like 20 some seats, 30, which is a record number of women,
You guys
and
went
18 seats or so.
right.
It was a huge number, over 20 seats, I believe. It was
Right.
pretty.
So you guys went up 20 seats and you only lost 4 or 5 seats. Okay. Now, unfortunately, that was the majority, but to go up that and not go back, that is an achievement. Not everything everyone wanted. I get it. We were all in there trying to make phone calls and help every single one we could. But that
Yeah.
is an achievement. The fact that a Democratic governor of New Jersey had not until this year been reelected in almost 20 something years. It happened this time. So when we get in there and we fight and we push back, we're right and we win, and the voters agree with us when Republicans aren't trying to silence their voices.
Well, I tell people all the time, don't be discouraged, be encouraged. We're going to lose some, but we're going to win a lot more than we lose, as long as we continue to do what I think is best for most people and what most people want. And as long as they have a chance to do that, we're going to keep moving ahead. I've got no problem with it at all. So, Andrew, I know we're getting close to that final couple of minutes in the show, but I always like to ask people to provide their social media handles and to tell me what is their personal project that they really would love to see get done. In this case, I'll make it like, what do you want to see get done? The number one thing for you in 2022.
I want to make sure we're holding on to the House. We're picking up seats in the Senate. That's our number one. Number one and number two priorities, right? So we got a couple of seats to protect in Georgia. We have a chance to pick up seats, and we got some seats we have to protect in Nevada. We also have a chance to pick up some seats in states like North Carolina and Wisconsin, amongst others. So we need to get in there and in Pennsylvania. So we go in there and make sure we're fighting to keep those. The redistricting process, it's going to be close. Again, a lot of these states, which are partisan gerrymanders, are going to make it more difficult. California just came out with their maps and made a lot of seats more Democratic. So I think that will help offset a couple of things. And Virginia as well, although we want to make sure we're helping Elaine Luria. She's going to have, she's going to need a lot of our support, as will Spanberger, to make sure that we're holding on to every seat wherever we can. So, so those are the kinds of things I think number one and number two, and then making sure that that we're supporting the president's small business agenda as well.
Well, I'll only add one other caveat to that, which I think goes without saying. None of this can happen unless voting rights.
You get in there and we're protecting people's rights to vote. We're getting people out to vote. And just as importantly, and we're supporting everyone to make sure that every person is able to vote. That's number one. I don't use Twitter that much. I do have a Facebook page, and then DNC Small Biz on Instagram. It's a BIZ. And DNC Small Biz and Facebook is our Facebook page. We encourage you all to join so you can get a lot of this great information. And we're, of course, having our upcoming DNC meeting coming up in the spring. It may even be in person sometime in February to May. So we'll be there. We're looking forward to seeing everyone soon. And Aaron, glad to see everyone is safe and doing well down there in Louisiana. And same with you, Mark. Hopefully you'll have dug your way out soon. And we'll see you all soon.
Well, that's definitely on the money. You hit it in all the places. And as I always want to tell people, we're going to go out with a little bit of Bob. Hey, this is it for the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show live, and we'll see you next time. And Andrew, thank you for being on the show as we go get them in 2022. We'll see everybody later.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you for all your great work.
Oh, you too, Andrew.